So, I've been driving trucks for about 3 years now, and I thought I'd seen it all. But what happened on my last run? Man, I still can't wrap my head around it. I'm not even sure I should be writing this, but I need to tell someone. It started off as a pretty normal job. I was hauling a load of electronics from Houston to Miami. The manifest said it was mostly high-end computers and stuff. Nothing out of the ordinary, you know? I left Houston around noon on a Tuesday. The first part of the trip was uneventful. Just me, the road, and some podcasts to keep me company. I made good time, only stopping for gas and a quick bite to eat. It was when I hit the Florida state line that things started getting weird. My GPS suddenly went haywire, showing me in the middle of the ocean when I was clearly on I-10. I figured it was just a glitch and switched it off. About an hour later, I noticed something odd. The truck felt lighter. Now, I've been doing this long enough to know how a fully loaded truck should feel, and something was definitely off. But I checked my mirrors and the trailer was still there, sealed tight. I tried to shake it off, but the feeling kept nagging at me. As I got closer to Miami, it got worse. The truck was handling like it was empty, but that was impossible. I'd sealed the trailer myself back in Houston. When I finally pulled into the delivery depot in Miami, it was almost midnight. The place was deserted except for the night security guard. I backed up to the loading dock, my hands sweating on the wheel. The guard came over, clipboard in hand. "Everything okay?" he asked, probably noticing how nervous I looked. "Yeah, fine," I lied. "Just a long drive." I climbed out and went to open the trailer. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it. I broke the seal, took a deep breath, sat and swung the doors open. It was empty. Completely, totally empty. I stood there staring into the bare trailer, my mind refusing to process what I was seeing. The guard came around, shining his flashlight inside. "Where's the cargo?" he asked, confused. I couldn't answer. I just kept staring, trying to make sense of it. There was no way this could happen. No way. The guard called his supervisor, and things quickly spiraled out of control. Police were called. My company was notified. I was questioned for hours, but I had no answers. How do you explain a whole truckload of electronics just vanishing into thin air? They checked the GPS logs, which showed I'd made no unauthorized stops. The seal on the trailer was intact until I opened it. There was no evidence of tampering, no signs of theft. It was like the cargo had just disappeared. My company suspended me pending investigation. The police treated me like a suspect. I kept replaying the trip in my mind, trying to figure out what could have happened. But it made no sense. That's when things got even weirder. A few days after the incident, I started getting strange phone calls. Just breathing on the other end, or sometimes static and what sounded like whispers. I'd hang up, but they'd call back, over and over. Then I started noticing cars following me. Dark sedans with tinted windows. They'd be parked outside my apartment or tail me when I went to the store. Once, I saw a guy in a suit watching me through binoculars from across the street. About a week ago, I came home to find my apartment had been searched. Nothing was taken, but things were moved around, papers rifled through. And on my bedroom mirror, written in what looked like red marker, "We know what you saw." I'm freaking out, man. I don't know what's going on, but I know it's big. Bigger than missing cargo. I've got a friend who knows about computers, and he said the manifest I showed him listed some seriously advanced tech. Like military-grade stuff. I'm writing this from a motel room 2 states away. I don't know who's after me or why, but I know I'm not safe. I'm thinking of just ditching my phone and disappearing for a while. So if you're a trucker and you get offered a load of electronics from Houston to Miami, my advice, don't take it. Some loads aren't worth the pay, and some things are better left unseen. I don't know if I'll be able to post again. If you don't hear from me, well, you'll know why. Stay safe out there and watch your cargo. You never know what might be hiding in plain sight. Alright, so I've been driving trucks for about 4 years now, and I've seen some weird stuff on the road. But what happened to me last week at this old diner? Man, I still can't shake it off. I was doing a long haul from Seattle to Phoenix, taking I-5 south. It was late, probably around 1 a.m. when I hit Southern Oregon. I was getting pretty hungry and in need of a coffee refill, so when I saw a sign for a 24-hour diner coming up, I decided to pull over. The place looked like your typical roadside diner, you know, the kind that's been there forever, with a neon sign that's seen better days. There were a couple of cars in the parking lot, which I thought was weird for that time of night, but I figured maybe they had some locals who were night owls. As soon as I walked in, I got this weird feeling, like the hair on the back of my neck stood up. But I brushed it off, thinking I was just tired from all the driving. The inside of the diner looked normal enough. Red vinyl booths, a long counter with stools, the smell of coffee and grease in the air. There were a few other customers scattered around, an old guy at the counter, a couple in one of the booths, and a woman sitting alone by the window. I took a seat at the counter and ordered a coffee and some eggs. The waitress, an older lady with a kind face, brought my order pretty quick. As I was eating, I couldn't shake this feeling that something was off. It was too quiet, like unnaturally quiet. No clinking of dishes, no murmur of conversation, nothing. That's when I noticed the reflections in the windows. At first, I thought I was just seeing things. In the reflection of the window next to me, instead of the empty parking lot, I saw a bustling diner full of people. But these people, they were dressed like they were from the 1950s or something. I blinked hard and looked again. The reflection was still there, clear as day. I could see a guy in a Letterman jacket with his arm around a girl in a poodle skirt, a waitress in one of those old-fashioned uniforms with the little hat. It was like looking through a window into the past. My heart started racing. I glanced around the diner, but everything looked normal. The same few customers, the same quiet atmosphere. But in every window I saw a different scene. In one, I saw what looked like a heated argument between two men in suits. As I watched, one of them pulled out a gun and shot the other point blank. I nearly fell off my stool, but when I looked around, nobody else seemed to have noticed anything. In another window, I saw a young woman crying at a booth, mascara running down her face. An older man was yelling at her, his face red with anger. I couldn't hear what he was saying, but I could see the fear in the woman's eyes. Each window showed a different scene, each more disturbing than the last. A fistfight that ended with a man's head being smashed against the counter. A waitress slipping something into a customer's coffee when they weren't looking. A group of people in what looked like 1930s clothes, looking gaunt and desperate, fighting over scraps of food. I was freaking out at this point. I turned to the waitress, hoping she could explain what was going on, but she was gone. In fact, everyone was gone. The diner was completely empty. I jumped up, knocking over my coffee cup. It hit the floor with a crash that echoed in the empty diner. I ran for the door, my heart pounding in my ears. As I reached for the handle, I caught one last reflection in the glass. It was me, but not me. This version of me looked older, haggard, with dark circles under my eyes and a haunted look on my face. And behind me in the reflection, I could see all the people from the other reflections, staring at me with hollow eyes. I yanked the door open and ran to my truck. I drove out of there so fast I'm surprised I didn't flip the rig. I didn't stop driving until I hit California. I've been trying to make sense of it ever since. I looked up the diner online, and what I found chilled me to the bone. Apparently that place has been there since the 1920s, and it's seen its fair share of tragedy. Murders, suicides, accidents, all sorts of dark stuff. I don't know what I saw that night. Maybe those reflections were echoes of the past, or maybe I'm just losing my mind. But I know one thing for sure, I'm never stopping at a roadside diner in the middle of the night again. Sometimes, when I catch my reflection in my truck's side mirror, I swear I can see that older, haunted version of myself staring back at me. And behind him, just for a second, I see those hollow-eyed people, watching and waiting. Okay, so I've been driving trucks for about 2 years now, and I've got some weird stories. But this one, man, it still gives me chills just thinking about it. It was about a month ago. I was doing a run from Portland to Boise, taking this backroad shortcut through the Malheur National Forest. It was late, probably around midnight, and I was the only one on the road. The forest was thick on both sides, and my headlights were the only thing cutting through the darkness. At first, everything was normal. Just me, the road, and some old country tunes on the radio. But then, about an hour into the forest, my radio started acting up. It was just static at first, but then I swear I could hear voices coming through. Not like a radio station, but whispers. Really faint, like someone was right next to me, talking under their breath. I tried changing the station, but it was the same on all of them. Just these whispers, too quiet to make out what they were saying. I was starting to get freaked out, so I just turned the radio off. That's when I realized I could still hear them. The whispers were coming from outside the truck. I rolled down my window a crack, and they got louder. It sounded like dozens of voices, all whispering at once. Some sounded scared, some angry, some hungry. I was properly freaking out at this point. But I couldn't just stop in the middle of nowhere. So I kept driving, trying to ignore the whispers. But they were getting louder, more insistent. Then, out of nowhere, I saw a light through the trees. It looked like a campfire. Now I know I shouldn't have stopped. Everything in me was screaming to keep driving. But something made me pull over. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped out of the truck. The whispers were all around me now, and I could almost make out words. "Help us," I thought I heard. "Over here." I followed the light, pushing through the underbrush. After a few minutes, I came to a small clearing. There was an old campsite there, but it looked like it had been abandoned for years. The tents were rotted and collapsed, and the fire pit was cold and overgrown. But there was a fire burning, a big one, right in the middle of the clearing. And around it, I still don't know how to describe what I saw. They looked like people at first, but as I got closer, I realized they were wrong. Their proportions were off, like their limbs were too long, and their faces were just blank. No eyes, no mouth, nothing. They were all turned towards me, these faceless things, and the whispers were coming from them. I could hear them clearly now. "Join us," they were saying. "Stay with us." I don't remember dropping my flashlight. I don't remember running back to my truck. The next thing I knew, I was back on the highway, my hands shaking so bad I could barely hold the steering wheel. I drove straight through to Boise without stopping, the sun coming up as I hit the city limits. When I finally parked at the depot, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. There were scratches all down the side of my trailer. Deep scratches, like something with claws had been trying to get in. I quit my job that day. Couldn't bring myself to get back in that truck. I've been trying to rationalize it ever since. Maybe I fell asleep at the wheel and dreamed the whole thing. Maybe it was some kind of hallucination from too many hours on the road. But deep down, I know what I saw. And I know one thing for sure. I'm never driving through that forest again. Not for all the money in the world. Sometimes, when I'm alone in my apartment at night, I swear I can hear those whispers again. "Join us, stay with us." And every time, they sound a little closer. So if you're ever driving through the Malheur National Forest at night and you start hearing whispers or see a light in the woods, just keep driving. Don't stop, don't slow down, just get the hell out of there as fast as you can. Because whatever's in those woods, it's not human. And it's hungry. Alright, so I've been driving trucks for nearly 30 years now. I've seen it all, or at least I thought I had. But this last run, man, I still can't wrap my head around it. It was supposed to be my final delivery before retirement, but now I'm not sure I'll ever sleep soundly again. It started off normal enough. I was hauling a load from Chicago to a small town in upstate New York. The manifest said it was medical supplies, which wasn't unusual. I'd done plenty of runs like this before. I left Chicago early Monday morning, figuring I'd make it to New York by Tuesday afternoon. The first part of the trip was uneventful. Just me, the road, and some old rock tunes on the radio. It wasn't until I hit Pennsylvania that things started feeling off. My GPS suddenly went haywire, showing me driving through water when I was clearly on I-80. I figured it was just a glitch and switched to my backup paper maps. As I got closer to my destination, the weather took a turn. Heavy fog rolled in, so thick I could barely see 20 feet in front of me. I had to slow way down, which put me behind schedule. By the time I reached the town, it was well after midnight. The place was tiny, just a few streets clustered around a main road, and it was dead quiet. No cars, no people, not even a stray cat, just empty streets and dark houses. The fog made everything look hazy and unreal, like I was driving through a ghost town. I found the address easily enough, a large, old building on the outskirts of town. It looked like it might have been a hospital once, but it was hard to tell in the dark and fog. There were no lights on, no signs of life at all. I parked in the loading area and got out, clipboard in hand. The silence was oppressive. No crickets, no distant traffic, nothing. Just the sound of my own breathing and the occasional creak from my cooling truck engine. I walked up to the main entrance and rang the bell. No answer. I tried the door, and to my surprise, it was unlocked. Against my better judgment, I went inside. The interior was pitch black. I flicked on my flashlight and the beam cut through the darkness, revealing long, empty corridors. The place smelled musty, like it hadn't been used in years. "Hello?" I called out. My voice echoed down the hallways. No response. I started to get that feeling, you know? The one that tells you something's not right. But I had a job to do, so I pressed on, looking for someone, anyone, to sign for this delivery. As I went deeper into the building, I started noticing things. Odd stains on the walls and floors, scratch marks on some of the doors, and everywhere a thick layer of dust, like no one had been here in decades. Then I heard it. A soft sound, almost like whispering, coming from somewhere ahead of me. I followed it, my heart pounding in my chest. I turned a corner and found myself in what looked like an old operating room. And there, in the center, was a figure in a white coat, bent over an operating table. "Excuse me," I said, my voice shaking. "I've got a delivery." The figure turned, and I nearly dropped my flashlight. Its face, man, I don't even know how to describe it. It was like looking at static on an old TV. Blurry, shifting, not quite there. It spoke, and its voice was like 1,000 whispers all at once. "We've been waiting for you," it said. "The final piece has arrived." That's when I noticed the operating table. It wasn't empty. There was a body on it, covered with a sheet, a body that was starting to move. I didn't stick around to see more. I ran, faster than I've ever run in my life. I don't remember getting back to my truck or driving out of town. The next thing I knew, I was 100 miles away, pulled over at a rest stop, shaking so bad I could barely hold my coffee. I tried to report it, but who's gonna believe a story like that? The cops just looked at me like I was crazy. My company wasn't much help either. According to their records, there was no delivery scheduled to that address. The manifest I had vanished from my truck, along with the entire load. I retired the next day. Couldn't bring myself to get back behind the wheel. I've been trying to forget about it ever since, but some nights I swear I can hear those whispers. "The final piece has arrived," they say, and every time they sound a little closer. So if you're a trucker and you get a late-night delivery to a small town you've never heard of, maybe think twice before taking that job. Some deliveries are better left unmade. So, I've been driving trucks for about 4 years now, and I thought I'd seen everything the road could throw at me. But what happened last week? Man, I still can't shake it off. I'm not even sure I should be writing this, but I need to tell someone. It was a standard long-haul run from LA to Chicago. I left LA around noon on Tuesday, figuring I'd drive through the night and make it to Chicago by Thursday morning. Everything was normal for the first day. Just me, my rig, and miles of highway stretching out ahead. It was when I hit Utah that things started getting weird. It was about 2 a.m. and I was the only one on the road. The moon was full, casting this eerie glow over the desert landscape. I remember thinking how creepy it looked, all those weird rock formations throwing shadows in the moonlight. I was starting to feel the fatigue setting in, so I cranked up the radio and cracked the window for some fresh air. That's when I saw it, just a flicker of movement in my side mirror. At first I thought it was just my eyes playing tricks on me, but then I saw it again. There was something running alongside my truck. Now I'm doing 70 on the interstate, so whatever this thing was, it was fast. Really fast. I couldn't get a good look at it, just glimpses in my mirror. It seemed wrong somehow. Like its proportions were all off. I tried to tell myself it was just a coyote or something, but deep down, I knew that wasn't right. This thing was too big, too fast, and the way it moved, it was like nothing I'd ever seen before. I sped up, pushing 80, then 90, but every time I checked my mirror, it was still there, keeping pace. I could hear something now, too, a weird, high-pitched keening sound, barely audible over the roar of my engine. Then, out of nowhere, it was gone. I kept checking my mirrors, but there was nothing there, just empty road behind me. I started to relax a little, thinking maybe I'd imagined the whole thing. That's when I saw them ahead. There were dozens of them, maybe hundreds, lining both sides of the highway. They looked vaguely humanoid, but wrong. Their limbs were too long, too thin. Their heads were oddly shaped, with these huge, glowing eyes that reflected my headlights. As I got closer, they started moving. Not towards the road, thank God, but in this weird, jerky dance. It was like they were beckoning to me, calling me to join them. I was doing over 100 by this point, my knuckles white on the steering wheel. I blew past them, but in my mirrors I could see them turning to watch me go. All those glowing eyes following my truck. I drove like that for hours, too terrified to slow down or stop. Every time I thought I was in the clear, I'd see more of them. Sometimes just one or two by the roadside, sometimes whole groups of them. Always watching, always beckoning. It wasn't until the sun started coming up that they finally disappeared. One minute, they were there, and the next, gone, like they'd never existed at all. I pulled into the first truck stop I saw and just sat there, shaking. I couldn't bring myself to sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those things. I made it to Chicago eventually, a day late and scared out of my mind. I tried to tell my boss what happened, but he just looked at me like I was crazy. Said I must have been hallucinating from lack of sleep. Maybe he's right. Maybe it was all just in my head. But I can't shake the feeling that it was real. That those things are out there, waiting. I'm writing this from my apartment in Chicago. I quit my job yesterday. Couldn't bring myself to get back in that truck. I keep seeing things out of the corner of my eye, shadows moving when they shouldn't. And at night, I swear I can hear that keening sound outside my window. So if you're ever driving through Utah in the middle of the night and you see something moving in your mirror, don't look too closely. And whatever you do, don't slow down, because those things out there in the dark, they're waiting and they're hungry. I don't know if I'll ever drive again, but I know one thing for sure. I'll never look at the open road the same way again. Some things are better left unseen, and some stretches of highway are better left untraveled. Stay safe out there, folks, and keep your eyes on the road. You never know what might be watching from the shadows.
We hope you enjoyed this chilling tale. If it sent shivers down your spine, give us a thumbs up and share your thoughts in the comments below. What was your favorite part? Don't forget to subscribe for more spine-tingling stories and hit that notification bell so you never miss a scare. Until next time, stay spooky and remember, sometimes the darkest shadows hide the most terrifying secret.